Good morning. His Excellency President of Latvia, Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the conference Russia's War on Children. My name is Liena Dambiņa, and I'm the head of the Children's Hospital Foundation, but today I'm representing the team of conference organizers and patrons. Russia has caused an immense suffering to all Ukrainian children, but this conference is dedicated to those who have been kidnapped by Russia. Latvia has its own painful history because during Soviet Union, approximately 60,000 people, including 15,000 children, were forcefully deported to Russia. Therefore, almost every Latvian family has their own tragic personal story. Unfortunately, Russia continues to harm the most vulnerable ones. And by this date, nearly 20,000 Ukrainian children have been deported to Russia. For the past week, Children's Hospital Foundation has hosted 19 children who have been deported. We have hosted their families and their guardians. And we have tried to provide psychological and emotional support to all of them. This is our fifth rehabilitation camp for Ukrainian children, but it is the first time we witness the tragedies that has caused to a child by deportation to Russia. These children have lost the most important thing that any child could lose: their closest ones, their dearest ones, their parents. We will continue to support every Ukrainian child, but at the meantime, we understand that the best support, the best medicine, and the best therapy for these children is the victory of Ukraine. Therefore, I kindly hope that today we are ready to protect these children and to create a world where international leaders do not shake hands with people who are directly responsible for killing and torturing children, but instead we prosecute them and hold them responsible. I truly hope that this conference brings us a little bit closer to this kind of world where children are safe and protected. Slava Ukraini! Thank you. And now it is my honor to present two inspiring leaders. And as a first one, I kindly invite on the stage His Excellency, the President of Latvia, Mr. Edgars Rinkēvičs. Please.
Good morning, everyone. Dear Mrs. Zelenska, President Vaidevīte-Freiberga, President Levits, Excellencies, dear friends, ladies and gentlemen. It is my honor to welcome all of you to Riga. And first of all, I want to express my deepest gratitude to the organizers and supporters of this conference for bringing Russia's violations against children in the spotlight, for making sure that justice is going to be served. Let us make sure that today's discussions bring us closer to Ukrainian children reuniting with their families. We are here to help Ukraine to end Russia's aggression against Ukraine's children, to halt the unlawful deportations and forcible transfers of Ukrainian children, to search for the ways how to stop these atrocities and to bring children back. These are not just words, these are firm obligations that Latvia, together with more than 60 countries, have committed under the International Coalition of Countries for the Return of Ukrainian Children. During my visit to Ukraine last November, I was struck to hear many heartbreaking stories. Today, children who managed to escape Russia will tell their painful testimonies. The world needs to hear them and help other children to return to their families and loved ones. The very existence of unlawful deportations of children proves how inhumane and barbaric the enemy is. We all must take collective action to keep looking for solutions to bring back the children. But we also must remember and remind among the most pressing issues of the political and legal agenda that the children's issue has to be high on priority list. Dear participants, it is very upsetting that almost 20,000 children from Ukraine are reported to be illegally deported to Russia and Belarus. Or, as we are hearing, they have been forcibly relocated within the temporarily occupied territories of Ukraine. It is very alarming that the precise number actually might be higher. Only a little over than 400 have been returned and reunited with their loved ones. Russia demonstrates no intention to cooperate with Ukraine and international organizations to grant access to data and convene investigations. The international community must continue to put pressure on Russia to bring back the children. By forcibly removing them from their homes and families, Russia violates their fundamental rights to security, family life, and a sense of belonging. It is actively erasing their Ukrainian identity, inflicting unbelievable emotional and psychological trauma. What makes it even worse, Russia proudly exhibits its actions on a global stage. This violates international humanitarian law and amounts to a war crime. Russia's actions are brutal violation of the First Geneva Convention. International community needs to make every effort to condemn Russia's illegal acts and demand accountability from Russia and from its accomplice, Belarus. Issuance of the International Criminal Court arrest warrants against Vladimir Putin and Maria Lvova-Belova is a right step, but also others must be held accountable. Distinguished guests, we need to be clear. As long as Russia occupies Ukrainian territories, innocent civilians will suffer. Families will be torn apart and human rights will be violated. As Nobel Peace Prize laureate Alexandra Matviichuk has said, if you want to help us, please provide Ukraine with weapons. You have to defend the law with weapons too. To end the suffering of innocent civilians, we need to support Ukraine till its victory, and Latvia will do its part. And now, concluding my official remarks, let me just say one thing. 3 days ago, I was hosting those children whom you will be hearing also here later in the Riga Castle. I understand they enjoyed Riga Castle, but they said that Live Aqua Parks is probably the best part of their journey. But they also presented me with Roman, the 8-year-old, where the writing is, I'm just one of the tens of thousands of Ukrainian children kidnapped by the Russian regime. I think we should not rest while the last Roman is back.
Thank you, Mr. Rinkevich. And now I have a great honor to welcome on the stage an inspiring leader, a leader who leads by example with her selfless and hard work, bringing international community's attention to suffering of Ukrainian children. Let's give a very welcome to our dear guest, the First Lady of Ukraine, Ms. Olena Zelenska. Please welcome.
Hello, dear guests. I will speak Ukrainian, so you can use your headsets to understand me. Дорогі гості, доброго дня.
Dear guests, hello. First of all, I would like to thank you for this opportunity to be here today and to speak about one of the probably most painful topics for us. Unfortunately, there's a lot of different kinds of pain in the war, but one of the hardest pains is the pain of the most vulnerable. And the most gentle ones, our children. You will hear several stories from me today. I have to tell stories. I have to tell stories to the world. And I think it works. It has the biggest effect when you hear the names and not just know the statistics. As I was preparing for this trip, we were following the news from Kharkiv together with my team. Unfortunately, this city is constantly under fire. And rescuers were, emergency teams were uncovering the debris of the ruined house. At first they found the dead mother, then father, and then they took their 8-year-old daughter, Kira, out on the blanket, and unfortunately she died as well. Similarly, 9-year-old Bogdan from Pokrovsk was also discovered in the debris of his house, as well as his two cousins, small cousins, and they especially came to celebrate a family, to have a family celebration from evacuation to visit their grandmother. And these children were thinking of the future. They were happy about their plans, about their school marks, about learning what their parents were telling them about the world. 8-year-old Maria Novorodivka loved the local library and dancing club. 11 years old Glib from Kherson. They say that he was a very capable piano player. But both of those children did not live to see the new year, and they died in the Russian shellings. None of these families none of the families in the world prepared for war, prepared their children for the war. We hope for our children to have the war, to have the happy future. And now the war ruins the worlds that are being nurtured by their families. Now we know about 520 children who died as a result of the Russian war. The number of wounded children is over 1,000. And this is not just traumas. Very often these are life-changing traumas. Recently in Kharkiv region, a 10-year-old boy lost his leg in the shelling, and he's looking at a lifetime on a prosthetic. Unfortunately, Russia is waging the war using all of its criminal arsenal, including rape. The youngest victim was 4 years old, as established by our Prosecutor General's office. I will not give the names of these children. I will not give the details, but every terror of war is terrible in its own way. Even if the child was not hit by bullets or missiles, if the child was not raped, every one of the 7.5 million Ukrainian children, one way or another, was hit by the war. Bogdan Yermokhin was an orphan, aged 17. He was in an orphanage in Mariupol, and Russians started literally killing that city. During the shelling, he was saved by a friend. He covered Bogdan with his body and died. A small girl died of wounds And earlier on, he found that girl near the body of the dead mother. And this is already a lot of pain. But then the occupiers took him out to Russia. He would run away. They would catch him back. And they were planning a prize for his present for his 18 years anniversary. Conscription notice for the Russian army, but he found a way to transfer the video address to the president of Ukraine, and dozens of people from different organizations and countries made it possible for Bogdan to leave Russia for Belarus on his birthday and go back to Ukraine. What if he were younger, if he couldn't find access to internet, if he didn't have so much energy and persistence? Not everyone out of the thousands of Ukrainian children who were deported to Russia could do that. And Russia is fighting with yet another weapon. They are telling them that they are not wanted, that nobody is looking for them. They're changing their names. They're trying to issue the Russian passports, as was earlier announced by the Russian dictator. Mother of 6-year-old Renat and 10-year-old Varvara were liberated back in 2022. But liberating the children from Russia with live parents, well, it's something that could only be done a year later. Can you imagine what they lived throughout this time? It may seem like there's a lot of rescue stories, but Ukraine actually managed to bring back only 388 children. And with this, at this rate, it will take us 50 years to bring all the children back. This will not be children anymore. This will be adults. It's unfathomable that this is happening here. And even now, hundreds, thousands of people are looking for their own roots in Poland, in Latvia, in the Czech Republic. People who were forcibly deported, whose language was taken away, people who sustained a terrible experiment. Can this really happen 70 years later? Over the past year, the world has adopted many important documents and did a lot of actions to rescue Ukrainian children. Only 5 days ago, this was the topic of the urgent debates on the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe. But you can see it in the figures that I just mentioned, that this is not enough. When we're talking about children's lives, this is what we have to say. We have to do more. And one country cannot resolve that. The ways of legal assistance from the international community for Ukraine do exist. And first of all, that includes the development of a transparent mechanism of return of children, and that should be reflected in the UN General Assembly resolution. And the participation of countries directly as intermediary countries, because the terrorist country is refusing direct negotiations with Ukraine. Geneva Convention said that the return can happen both to the state of the child's origin and citizenship and to the territory of the third countries, which are not parties to conflict. So the countries of the Baltic region, which are close to Russia, could be such a mechanism. All of these are countries where active participation of partners is expected. In the case of Bogdan Yermokhin, he was returned home by Qatar and UNICEF, and we're extremely grateful for that. His story is the story of how every country, every individual country, and every individual international organization could work together with Ukraine to return children. And we will fight for each of our children. We will fight for each of our stolen children, no matter how many resources are required to do that. And I hope you are gathering here for that as well. Hopefully, we can speed up this together. The adults have no more important task to use their power and resources, but for the rescue of children. I hope that we're gathered here for this exact purpose. Thank you.
Thank you, dear Ms. Zelenska, for unifying us all in supporting and helping Ukrainian children. And now I have an honor to present our Prime Minister, Evika Silinya. She is now in Brussels fighting for the interests of Ukraine, but I'm grateful that she found a way to participate in today's conference. Please see the video.
Dear Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, and most importantly, dear children, my heart is with you as I engage in the European Council meeting in Brussels. The evidence reveals horrifying war crimes against Ukrainian children. The illegal deportation and forced transfer of Ukrainian children by Russia and Belarus is not just a violation of international law, it's a profound test to our shared humanity. As a mother of three myself, my solidarity and compassion are with Ukrainian mothers, underscoring the need for swift action to protect innocence. In March 2023, the International Criminal Court issued arrest warrants against Vladimir Putin and Maria Lvova-Belova for their part in these crimes against children. Ensuring accountability for human rights violations and war crimes is crucial. Together with the international community and Ukraine, our aim is to safeguard children's rights and bring deported children back home. Latvia's commitment to supporting Ukraine is unwavering. Since 2022, over 53,000 Ukrainians have found refuge in Latvia, including almost 5,000 children studying in our schools and kindergartens. Today's conference warmly welcomes brave children from Ukraine, ready to share their stories. Let us listen, recording and amplifying their voices across the globe. Ukraine's strength lies in the strong spirit of its parents and the resilience of its children. Ukraine will be victorious. Slava Ukraini!
Thank you, Ms. Silina. And now the conference has been officially opened. I would like to present our first story, the story of Ilya, who is one of the children who are participating in our camp this week. And he's one of those, say lucky wouldn't be fair, but he's at least have found a way home to Ukraine. But unfortunately, he's only of those few hundreds who have managed to do so. Please, let's watch Ilya's story.
In the heart of Europe, Russia has been waging an unforgiving war against Ukraine since February 2022, with a shocking disregard for rules and moral boundaries. Every passing day extracts a heavy toll on innocent lives, forever transforming Ukrainian children and their childhoods.
My name is Ilya, and I'm 11 years old, but at the time, I was 9. I live in Mariupol with my mother and brother. Well, used to live. Before the war, everything was fine. I had a good mother, a good school, friends, and a home. In general, my city was cool. At first, everything was relatively quiet, and then the explosion started. And after that, I realized that the war had already begun. Once we went to a neighbor's house to hide for the night because our house was hit by a rocket and it was no longer possible to live in it. And then there was a boom. I was injured here, here, and here, and my mom was hit in the forehead. I realized that my mom was dead when our neighbor came to her and took her pulse. And after that, we all knew that my mother had died. I more or less managed to hold myself together, but it was very painful. Mentally, it hurt me much more than the pain that the injury brought me. The neighbor buried my mother in our own yard, behind our own house. I stayed with the neighbors in that house for a while, and then one day these Russian soldiers came and announced an evacuation. I was in Donetsk for a month. I underwent various surgeries and procedures there. The very first operation was to remove this fragment, but it was not easy, and it was done without anesthesia. Despite the fact that I had a serious injury, in this hospital they still tried to, well, make me into a kind of propaganda tool. I was taught to write in Russian. And one day my doctor came to me and said, "Now you will not say glory to Ukraine, but glory to Ukraine as part of Russia." That was probably one of the methods of their zombification. But I am not one to be duped so easily.
After the full-scale war started on the 24th of February, I had contact with my daughter until the 2nd of March. And when contact was lost and there was no electricity, my son in Austria had already found a video for me from the Russian Federation, where Ilya was admitted to a hospital, a trauma center in Donetsk. And he sent me this video, and I learned that Ilya was alone in the hospital, and my daughter had been killed. I realized that my daughter could no longer be brought back. And I realized that Ilya had to be freed from Donetsk. And then I'd already begun to dream about how it would be, and began to knock on different doors, and thank God they helped me to do it. On the 22nd of April, we returned to Akhmedov Hospital in Ukraine. He couldn't walk. There, our doctors took 4 fragments out of him. 11 more remain. He was in such a condition. You should understand, he had a school, he had a home, he had a mother, and he lost all of that, his entire childhood. He kept to himself, he was afraid of noise, he was afraid of air raid sirens. He had no memory. He remembered only those moments that were with him in that horror that he went through with his mother in Mariupol.
In the future, I would like to become a doctor so that I can be the same as our guys on the front lines. Combat medics and ordinary ones, they are real heroes. They're like soldiers, although their work is a little different, but they are all still heroes.
Трішки інша у них робота, але вони всі герої.
I think we all can give a great respect and applause to Ilya for his courage, sharing his story with us. I have no doubt in my mind that he will become an excellent doctor and will fulfill every dream that he has. And with the story of Ilya, we're opening our first panel when we will hear the experiences of those children who have been deported to Russia. And again, it is my honor to welcome on a stage 3 wonderful, courageous, remarkable women. Ms. Olena Zelenska, the First Lady of Ukraine. Ms. Andra Levite, the former First Lady of Latvia, a great friend and true friend to Ukraine. And Ms. Daria Gerasimchuk, Advisor Commissioner of the President of Ukraine for Children's Rights and Rehabilitation. Please, Daria, the floor is yours.
Вітаю вас, шановні перші леді.
Let me greet you, dear First Ladies. I'm glad to greet all present members. Let's start our work with the first panel with the evidences of the children. As all the conference is dedicated to the problem of deported and transported illegally Ukrainian children by Russia. All the atrocities that happen with Ukrainian children at the territory of Ukraine are not restricted only by deportation and forced transferring, as Alena Vladimirovna already mentioned in her speech. And for the second day, we talk about children which our neighbor, maniac, terrorist, steals, who abducts them not to return them ever. And before asking the first question to you, Ms. Andra, I would like to thank you and all Latvia for all your deeds that you perform for Ukrainian children, for their sake and for their safety. Thank you. And my first question is the following. Everybody knows that your husband, Mr. Levitz, voiced the idea of creation of this conference. How do you think? Why does he have this idea to launch this conference, and why is it so important? Why is it important to speak about this topic? And I would like to guide you, your thoughts in direction whether Russian Federation deserves forgiveness for everything that they do for Ukrainian children, maybe not now, but in the future. What is your opinion?
Thank you, Daria. Thank you, Olena, for inviting me to take part in this very important conference. And we will discuss very important, but also very, very painful questions, because it deals with children who are innocent, who haven't seen much of the life, and sadly, many Ukrainian children have only seen bad things, and they grow up with thinking the world is bad, thinking about the people are bad, because they have experienced pain, they have experienced tears, they have experienced cries and bombs on their houses. They have seen things they shouldn't have seen in this age. They should be joyous and they should be happy, enjoying their childhood, but this is taken away from them by a brutal war committed by Russia. I would like to talk about some things. I won't talk about the number of the abused Ukrainian children, because even one abducted children is too much. I will not talk about the legal questions, because I think the hall is full with brilliant lawyers who will deal with this question. I'm a medical doctor who works with girls and women, and I will talk from the medical, psychological perspective. There is a war against children, deportation of children. This is highly morally reprehensible. Children, this includes minors, orphans, children with physical, intellectual, or mental disabilities. In Latvia, the term or crime, deportation, brings back very painful memories, because in 1941 and 1949, during the Russian occupation of Latvia, many Latvians, including children, were deported to Siberia. On November 20, 1989, the UN General Assembly accepted the Convention on the Rights of the Child, later also ratified by Russia. I will only mention some articles. Article 6, the right to live. Article 9, the right not to be violently separated from parents. Article 19, protection against violence. Article 34, protection against sexual violence. All mentioned rights Russia is violating. War crime is committed against Ukrainian children. For the abused children, Ukrainian children, people like Olena, like Daria, like different NGOs, like governmental institutions, and international conferences like today's are guarantees to regain their freedom. These members are constantly maintaining attention to the public opinion about the crime happening against these children. There will be the day of return, and on their day of return, they will learn, these children will learn, they were never forgotten. There were constant demands for their freedom, despite Russia's propaganda, despite attempts of Russification by changing their children's names or prohibiting to speak Ukrainian language. These permanent efforts and actions will be an immense help for the abducted children on their long journey of healing. And it will be a long and painful journey. To overcome physical, mental, and even sexual violence is always long and painful. Sooner or later, hopefully sooner, the day will come when the abducted Ukrainian children will return to their families, to their hometowns. On the day of their return, there will be tears of joy, smiles, laughter, hugs, kisses. But sadly, and I will mention some sad facts, no child will return the same as it was before all this happened. Abduction, physical, emotional, and/or sexual violence will have left scars. We saw the scars on Ilya's legs. There will be visible and invisible scars on every child. I will mention some of these medical and psychological considerations, sad facts for which Russia is responsible. There will be short-term consequences, and there will be consequences that will stay with the victim for life. There will be deeply personal consequences, and there will be consequences for the Ukrainian society in whole. There will be consequences we can treat and heal, and there will be consequences that will be fatal. The visible marks of the abductions, including after physical violence, will be a variety of injuries. As we saw in the film, as Ilya presented his leg, his injured leg, there will be bruises, hematomes, wounds. The invisible marks will include all kinds of emotions. There will be anger, disgust, fear, humiliation. And these are only some of the primary emotional stages, but they will be followed by more severe and longer lasting mental disorders. I will mention some. There will be depression, anxiety, panic, unpredictable flashbacks, suicidal tendencies, aggression towards themselves or others, sleep and eating disorders, emotional withdrawal from former life. The short-term consequences may be painful physical injuries that can be cured if treated rightly, but there will be lifelong consequences, especially after sexual violence. This might include sexual transmitted diseases. All these diseases could cause chronic pain, destroy personal dreams, have a lifelong dependency on medication, countless medical treatments, hospitalization, and even death. A very particular significant lifelong consequence, especially for girls and young women after sexual violence and rape, as we as we heard from Olena, that is happening, will be unintended pregnancies. Every pregnancy should be a welcome and joyous event. The mother-to-be should be able to love the child from the beginning. No new life should be created where there is hate and humiliation on one side and fear and disgust on the other one. There will also be consequences for the Ukrainian society after this brutal abduction of this huge number of children. Undoubtedly, after experiencing this kind of terror and completely loss of self-determination, some of these children will have problems in integrating in regular family structures, in social life, in educational systems. Their talents and skills might remain undeveloped. I do not like speaking about people as human resources, but young people with severe physical and mental health issues will be painfully missed in building and changing the social, cultural, and economic future of a nation. Therefore, all these children deserve the help they need to heal, both physically and emotionally. The help should be offered in an unbiased and empathetic manner. It should be available as soon after the crime as possible. It should be close to where the victims live and offered by qualified professionals in the victim's native language. Nowadays, we know the medical term PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. It is a common sense, but formally, and in many countries even nowadays, it is only known in academic spheres. Formally, people who suffered PTSD after horrifying events such as war, abduction, deportation, they were told to forget the trauma, to be silent, to carry on with their normal life. And most of them did so, but they had nightmares, painful flashbacks, they developed different kinds of emotional disorders, committed suicides, and initiated intergenerational trauma. The next generation, the children of these children who are suffering today, they suffered without really knowing why, because the parents had erected a wall of silence. Today we know that professional help may smoothen one's own trauma, but also the burden of the next generation. In the following discussion, we will hear the statement of two extraordinary Latvian women. And as someone who grew up in a refugee family, I hope they agree with me that it is not easy to be a refugee or to be born in a family of deportees. Therefore, our demand today, tomorrow, and the day after tomorrow is release all Ukrainian children immediately and let them come home.
Дякую вам, пані Андро.
Thank you very much, Ms. Andra. You are absolutely right, and every day Ukrainian children are wounded not only psychologically, but also physically. They have wounds, they have scars, which remind them on a daily basis what they have survived. And very soon, at this stage, we will have children who were in recreation camp in Latvia. They will share their stories, and now they are not here, just because we understand that even when they are listening again their story via video or hear it from my when I talk it, it's traumatizing them again. So they will join this meeting after our conversation, and they are the witnesses and illustration of all 6 scenarios which Russians use for abduction. So you heard it correctly. Scenarios, because the politics of Russian Federation is formed very clearly, precisely, and planned. And you may understand that it's focused on genocide of Ukrainian nation via genocide of Ukrainian children. Russians first kill the parents, then they abduct the children and send them by force, withdraw them from biological family. Children are separated from parents while filtration measures, or they create the conditions where the children cannot live and kind of voluntary suggest the parents to give the children for so-called recreation and healing, after which they don't return home again, or they are transferred from the institution where some amount under constantly housing, and they are transferring such children to the territory not controlled by Ukrainian government, or they withdraw children to Russian Federation or Belarus after they found kind of fake diagnosis which the child doesn't have, and they need the child to rehabilitate not at home. You have heard Ilya's story, and it's scary, but today we don't have children present yet, so I want to share with you one more story. This is the story of Kira, who was 12 years old at the beginning of full-scale invasion. Her mom died when the girl was approximately couple of weeks, and she was raised by her native father. And a few weeks before full-scale invasion, the older sister went to Poland to studies, and the girls haven't seen each other. When the full-scale invasion started, she was in occupied Mariupol. She saw horrifying things. She saw a lot of killed bodies of killed people. She was without food every day, and it was a holiday when father could find some food. When you ask Kira what most of all she lacks during the occupation, she was telling she wanted to eat bread, just simple bread. Other children were sharing other things, but one day, they, together with her father and his girlfriend, they were hiding in the flat. Father went to the balcony to take the remains of the food which they had in order to find other shelter, because the whole building was kind of dancing under Russian shellings. Father didn't return from that balcony. He stayed there forever, and he was not buried. Kira didn't see her dead father, but she realized that he died immediately.
Далі дівчинка разом з татовою дівчиною Анною і
The girl with the other relatives for more than 2 weeks stayed in Mariupol. They were moving from shelter to shelter, hiding in the basements. They were finding some people they knew. They were glad they are alive. They were finding some new remains of food, and they found chocolate candies which they didn't eat. They didn't eat them. Each of them had one, and they put into a pocket, and this was a motivation. So when we will go to Ukrainian controlled territory, the first thing we will do at the free area, we will eat chocolate candy there. So this is the best motivation for this child, as she remembers. But on the way to Mangush, another girl, a friend of Kira, stepped on the stretch, and they were bombed. They stepped onto a mine, and she was wounded. Kira and her friend, they were transferred, and occupants took the girls to Donetsk. Kira was in Donetsk hospital during 1 month before her her father didn't take her. The whole month, the girl was in such shock. she couldn't understand that she has a mobile phone uncharged in her backpack and she can call her grandfather. And in 1 month, she understood she can do it. She took the phone, she notified her grandfather and notified him that her father was dead. And that's how we returned this child, this girl. This was a happy end story, but the things that this girl and hundreds of other kids survived in occupied cities after abduction, this affects their mental health very much. Elena, please tell me, this is the next question to you. Mr. Andrew told about the trauma, that these are not healing soul. Can you erase some painful scars and memories from the soul of kids, and how can we improve their mental health? I know it's a hard question, but I know that this is the question that you deal with. Thank you, Dario, for this complicated but very important question. I'll start with the fact that from the very beginning, we need to take the children, we need to understand take quick mechanisms of how to return each child, taking into consideration its personal needs. First of all, we need to do the fact that Russians don't do, taking good care of interests and needs of the child, because they are abducted from Ukraine, not taking into consideration children rights, Geneva Conventions, and anything that adults should guarantee to the child. So when we elaborate any mechanisms of returning of the child, we need to take care of the child. And these mechanisms are elaborated with initiative of the president. The initiative Bring Kids Back UA, which involves the coalition of countries to return Ukrainian kids, being headed by Canada, and the next meeting will be held the day after tomorrow. Hopefully, Latvia will also take active participation in this coalition. And after and during the time when the child can be withdrawn, and as it was created last year under supervision of Dmitry Lubinets, and it's done in order not to traumatize more and to help each child. Each situation is tracked separately, and the child receives social, psychological assistance and legal assistance.
The child gets social assistance, and the child gets interviewed only once under Barnahus system, but this evidence is necessary to make sure that all perpetrators are brought to account. And here comes the most difficult question. We're asking ourselves this question now. What can we offer to these children after their return? Yes, we offer them safety, we offer the reinstatement of their rights, but we have to understand that there are lots of children who have been deported now, who were taken from the institutions, and they are deprived of parental care, or they're orphan children, and we cannot bring them back to institutions, particularly so that Ukraine is now removing the practice, stopping the practice of institutionalization of children, and we need to expand the system of foster families. We have to encourage foster parenthood, but this work is consistently being done in Ukraine. And there are plenty of people like that. I can give an example of two girls from Kherson region. They found themselves in non-controlled territory, but at that time their two sisters were already taken by foster families. A foster family. Luckily, those foster parents agreed to take those two girls as well. Now all children have foster parents and they are in safety. And we do have such people in Ukraine. However, there's another difficult question, which requires resources. First of all, human resources is psychological rehabilitation of every child. Now all children who are going through the Child Assistance Center are getting psychological assistance. We cannot just give one consultation. Child needs long-term support, and the family needs long-term support because adjustment comes in different ways. And we have to understand that circumstances are changing, life circumstances are changing, and the child should be under constant care of a psychologist. And we need a lot of specialists, a lot of psychologists like that. And we can honestly say that Ukraine does not really have enough of such psychologists. So we're working on a training of new psychologists to make sure they can pick up new cases. There's a lot of work to be done. And it takes not just expert resources, not just financial resources, but also human resources. People have to mobilize themselves. That is why we are continuing this conversation. We're participating in this conference because everybody has to know the whole range of the problem, not just pick them up and take them to safety, give them new housing and family, but make sure that a child can get out of the situation that they have been through. I don't think anyone can forget what they've been through. There's such things do not remain forgotten. But there are many cases where properly provided psychological assistance actually works, and the person can take care of themselves, take care of their own life, and live on, remembering it not as a negative experience that ruined them, but as a negative episode. And the children that will be on this stage, they've been through psychological assistance, they went through their integration program, so we have the permission for them to speak with their own words. The most important thing any nation has are children. Ukrainian children are in the Ukrainian hearts, in the hearts of Ukrainian adults, and they are very deeply. And we would like to say that we would like to hope that every Lithuanian heart also hears the phrase, every phrase said by those children firsthand. First ladies, I invite you to take your seats in the audience, and I would ask for our small heroes to come to the stage. Thank you. We will get prepared a little bit, and we will have the chance to hear their words, their voices. I will not ask the children to tell their own stories if they are related to the death of their parents. These will be more neutral, non-traumatizing questions, but there are several stories that we need to tell you directly, in detail. There are unfinished stories, despite the fact that some of the children are back home. I would like to invite the children in. Please come on in. Welcome our guests. Come to me. Come over here. We have young and small kids with us. Please take your seats. Over here. Okay, everybody found their seats? Okay, the guys decided to sit together. So, hi. We've seen each other in the morning, but I don't want you to be worried. I would like to thank you for being so brave. I am scared. I think Miss Andra and Miss Elena were also worried about being on the stage, but you're sitting here and I can see it in your eyes that you're not worried. No, we're not. You're not. That's very good. I will ask questions and I will ask you to use the microphones to respond. First of all, I'd like to address you, Sasha. Tell us, yes, you can have some water. Can you tell your story, Sasha? You're super brave. I know that you've been through a lot and that you have a lot to say to the audience. You have a lot to say about your own story. And I know you have something that you'd like to say to the whole world, right? Yes, it's working. My name is Sasha. I am 13. During the full-scale invasion, I lived in Mariupol with my mother and my sister. We wanted to leave Mariupol, but we couldn't do that because the train was blown up. So we made a decision to stay in Mariupol together with mother. Yes, with mother and sister. So we were there, we had some food, we had electricity, but later on, after a week or two, there was no food anymore. We were running out of food, so we were asking for food from our military. And on the 24th of March, the shooting started. And as far as I know, the sister was taken away by other relatives. Oh, she was with you yet. But later on, she was taken by other relatives, correct. On the 24th of March, the shelling started. Mother was in the house and I was playing outside. I ran into the shelter behind the concrete wall to wait through the shooting. I thought the sister was with a neighbor, and so I was afraid and I ran to get her. I ran into the stairwell and I got hit by a splinter. There was an explosion. So we decided to go to our military to get assistance. So you went to Illich factory, yes. There was military hospital there. There were other wounded military soldiers there. My eye was rinsed away by water and we spent 2 weeks there. Then Illich factory was besieged. And our hospital was surrounded. By then, the sister was taken by other relatives. So the military were taken as captives and civilians who were there were taken away. We were taken to the village of Bezimena for filtration. Then they said that mother will go through some filtration and then we will be released. She was taken into another room and she wasn't there for 1.5 or 2 hours. I was waiting for her, and then Novoazovsk Service for Children's Affairs came as they introduced themselves. And then my mother was brought back. So they said they will take me away from the mother. Without explanation, they took me away and took me to Novoazovsk to hospital. So they just led her by you. They didn't let you talk to each other. No, they didn't let us say goodbye. And they took you to the hospital, first to Novoazovsk. I was examined, spent 3 weeks there, and these were the 3 worst days when we were separated with my mother. Sasha, I know that you did an absolutely heroic thing. You found a very cunning way because your phone was taken away by the Russians. You found a very cunning way to contact your grandmother to inform about your whereabouts because you were afraid that you would be taken away further. This was in Donetsk. They took me after Novoazovsk there. They were thinking of doing some surgery on the eye. There was a boy who was 14 at that time, and we made friends. And I didn't know where my mother was, so we were looking for my grandmother. Did you tell the Russians that you have a biological grandmother, that you know her phone number so that they could give you a chance to contact her? And So they took no data from you. They didn't tell. They said that they will contact grandmother themselves if it would be necessary. So what would you like to say? I would like to address the room to find my mother, Kozlova Snezhana Mikhailivna. You haven't seen each other for 1.5 years, yes, but I'm convinced everything's going to be fine. Sashko, you're absolutely cool. I am inspired and in awe of your power. I would like to finish the conversation positively. What emotions did you have when grandmother came? I was very happy. We were on different stops. I thought she would come to one stop, and she came to a different stop. And they're calling me from the hospital that she came, and I was so happy. We hugged and we cried. And I will never forget that moment. I'm very happy that things worked out like that. I hope that your story ends well and that you would be able to reunite with your mother. Next question I'd like to ask Veronica, but please be brief. Veronica, tell me, please, here's a question for you. You were in Russia and you went to the Russian school. You were forced to go to the Russian school. I know that you were suffering from bullying and from different things. Can you tell us more? How do the Russians welcome children like you at school? At first, when I came to Russia, I was in grade 7, and we were only taught Russian language and literature. They didn't want to give us any maths or physics classes, sciences that are the same in other countries. We were only taught Russian language and Russian literature. There was no international literature as well. First, we studied together, and when I went to the 8th grade, Russian children were blaming me for mobilization of their parents. I was a bandera, I was a nationalist, according to their words. That's how they called me. I would come into a classroom, and then the guys would just be shouting bandera at me. Were there cases of some physical violence? They could push me deliberately or hit. It did happen. How long did you spend in the Russian Federation? I spent 1 year and 2 months. But they managed to bring you back after your mother's statement. A special UN meeting, UN session. And only after that you were returned. So you're with your mother and your grandmother. Yes. It was a huge dream for me to meet with my family. The Russians were saying that I will never leave the borders of Ukraine and that Ukraine doesn't exist. Yes, they told me that Ukraine doesn't exist. They first said that we're all Slavs, we're all brothers and sisters. Then they said that I'm bandera, I'm a nationalist. Again, because following the questions, are you for Ukraine or for Russia, I would say that I am holding neutral ground, because if I'd said I was for Ukraine, they would probably beat me up. So you understand that you had to preserve yourself as much as possible until the time you would be returned. Yes, I was looking forward to the return, because even talking on the phone with my mother, it was some kind of miracle already for me. I'm great. I'm glad everything happened the way it happened, that it ended, and that you can be with your family. I know that you would also like to, like in every conversation, you're telling adults that you want the parents to fight for the children, like your mother did. Yes. Because in our story, it seemed to me that this was the end and that I will end up in Russia forever. There was very little hope that I would be able to leave. The Russians were telling me that I will stay there forever and that I would not be able to go back. But there was a small hope, and it was something unimaginable. Very often, the Russians in the occupied territories are telling the parents whose children were taken away or for treatment, very often they tell the parents that that's it, you've given away your child. And when the parents start asking, bringing the children back, they're being told that no. If you're not happy with something, we will deprive you of parental rights altogether, or the Ukrainian authorities will deoccupy your settlement and will say you're collaborators, you worked with us, you signed the permission, and very often people get so intimidated under these conditions that they simply do not know what to do next. Sometimes they're trying to do something themselves, and it's they have to wait for this wonderful meeting with their children for a very long time, but some do not manage to return their children themselves. So it's very important that if everybody knows anything about children kidnapped by Russians, it's very important that they inform the Ukrainian structures and authorities. Yeah, your microphone. Grandmother saw you in the propaganda video, and that's how she knew what happened to you and to your mother. Tell me, please, maybe there's something that you would like to say about, something particular that you'd like to say about your time in the Donetsk hospital. Maybe you were told anything. It was scary there. I know that you were not intimidated or something at hospital. They didn't treat you badly. No, I was treated neutrally. They didn't offend me, but they didn't really express that they were sorry for you for your wounds. As far as I understand, you often were visited by journalists. Yes, a bit of troops, all kinds of military, various journalists. Did they ask you about anything, or did they do anything else? They just asked me, oh, say something. Or they just used me as a background. So they would make videos against your background, yes. And one of those videos helped your grandmother find you. What did the Russians tell you next? Did they tell you where you were going next? You told them that you have a grandmother that you want to come back. Yes. What did they tell you about Ukraine? They didn't say anything about Ukraine, but my doctor came to me at some point and he said that you will not be saying glory to Ukraine, but you will be saying glory to Ukraine within Russian Federation. Why did he say so? Because you said Slava Ukraini to anyone? Yes. Despite the fact that you were in the hospital and despite having occupiers all around, you were still saying glory to Ukraine. Ilya, I know that they were teaching you something. Yes, they were teaching me writing in Russian. When did that start? It started around second day. So you just came with such heavy wounds. You probably had other things on your mind. Yes. The whole month was pretty tough. So you're living with your grandmother in Ukraine. I will not mention the city where you live. How are you feeling about it? Did you manage to find new friends? Not yet, really? Why? Maybe because you like to be on your own at home and playing it with a tablet. Right, Ilya? Okay. Next, we will have Ivan and Maxim speaking. It will be the story of Ivan and Maxim. Next question. We've known you for some time, and the audience in this room could also hear your story yesterday in a documentary. that was presented yesterday. So here's my question. What do you remember about your time in Mariupol? What are the brightest memories can you share? Hello, my name is Ivan, and Maxim is next to me. I will speak Russian. I apologize for that. The first day of war, well, I found out from my mother. She told me that the war started. She called me. Luckily, my elder brother Alexei was next to me. I'm very grateful for that. We tried to replenish our stock of food and water, and we understood this was not gonna last. Gas, electricity was running out, so we couldn't do what people normally do every day. Our guardian, Anton Viktorovich, was giving us food, was bringing us food, and this is what happened until the 5th of March. On the 5th of March, we lost contact with Anton Viktorovich, our guardian. We understood there's no point staying on the left bank because everything is gonna go away. Anton Viktorovich called Ukrainian police for help. They were still in the city center. They were bringing humanitarian assistance. They were helping in every way they could. Police came to get us to the city center. All kids were brought together towards the drama theater. There was a technical college. There were grandmothers, small children, very small children. And this is how we lived until the 20th of March. We were trying to find water, food, because there was not there. Because on a normal day, you know, we have it all at hand, but we did not appreciate this at the time. Together with Maxim and my elder brother and his friend, we witnessed the hit on the drama theater. This was the hardest bombing that I could sustain. I saw a lot of wounded people. I was terrified to look at it. I'm grateful to my elder brother for his support because I was younger. I didn't understand what was going on. And thanks to him, I remained alive. And on the 20th of March, we decided to leave Mariupol. There was no point staying there. We understood where it was all going. So we left Mariupol. We were walking towards Mangush, and we found the Russian block post. We were inspected. We had bodily inspection, bodies, documents. I don't know what they wanted to find in our bodies, but luckily nobody had any problems. They let us pass. Our goal was to get to Mangush, to walk over, and then to the Ukraine-controlled territory. That was Zaporizhia region. And unfortunately, by the time we came to Mangush, a woman found out that we have no parental care, that we're orphans. My elder brother, who's 19, was with us. So they called the child service to Donetsk. And we understood that they would come to get us, and we didn't want to go to Donetsk because this was not our goal. And we decided very quickly to leave that town, but we couldn't do that. They called the military first. They found us quickly. The military, when they caught us on the bus stop and we tried to get away, they threatened us with weapons, said that if you do anything like that again, without permission, we will have big problems. So we had to go back to the hospital. The custody services were waiting for us. They picked us up. We didn't want to go there. We had a totally different goal. My elder brother was asked, do you want to go with your brother Ivan? Or do you want to go as you wanted? I spoke to the elder brother that it would be easier. It would be better if he went to the Ukrainian territory. And this was the right decision. I support my decision because things could be very different for him. Ukrainian children are Ukrainian children who are of age. Their goal is to take them to the front, to the military. So you understood that potentially you, Maxim, and other boys, that they potentially wanted to conscript you to the Russian army. I think so, yes. But luckily, I was a little bit shocked together with Maxim when we got into the hospital. We were in custody services. We were in Buyanovsky district, Child's Hospital number 5. I charged my phone. I tried to inform about my whereabouts to everyone I could contact that we were safe and sound. Maxim and I had common goal to go back home, and we wanted that, and we managed to do that. And I think every child managed to find their parents. They would want to stay with them. Maxim and I helped other children. 2 children aged 9. There was another boy, Nazar. They remembered the phone numbers of their parents. We had connection, and they could find their grandmothers and grandfathers, and they're together now. And we were very happy for them because we understood. And we believed that we would go back home as well. But until the last moment, nobody believed that our custodian, our guardian, Anton Viktorovich, would go back. Thank you, guys. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for getting through this, for staying strong. Most importantly, I would think that back when you were very scared, you still found the energy to help others. I'm very proud of all of our Ukrainian children. We have very little time left for this conversation, and just one word. I have a question. What do you miss out of your previous life from before the full-scale invasion? Just 1 or 2 words. I miss friends who stayed there. I miss walking in Veselka Park with my father. I miss the sea a lot, and generally I miss Mariupol a lot. It's good to be in Ukraine, but, Chernivtsi is good, but Mariupol is my native place. So you miss Mariupol itself. Okay. Thank you, Kira. Matvey, do you have anything to say? What do you miss? Most of all, I miss our home. We had our own house, courtyard. We had a dog. I miss the dog most. But I know you have a dog now as well. I'm not sure how your father allows this. There's 3 of you and you have Kane Corso, right?
Your father is a hero.
Thank you.
Sasha, do you want to share something? What do you miss? I miss our dog. So how do you call your dog now? Yaks. And please, Sveta, do you have something to share? What do you miss? I miss Ukrainian language. Because now you are not in Ukraine. Yes, we don't have it here at all. Yes, because children are in Latvia. They live with their father in Latvia now. We are grateful to Latvia for giving shelter to such wonderful family. Thank you, children, for your for being such fighters, for being so strong, for your dreams. I know you have a great deal of dreams, and hopefully all of us, all adults, those who heard the first starting panel in marathon of important conversations of this conference could be inspired by these wonderful children. I would like to thank Mr. President, the First Lady, for this common opening of our marathon. Thank you for participation and invite everybody to observe the video. The following detailed story of Sasha, and we will say bye to you. Thank you for participation.
We had no electricity, no gas, no water. We were standing by the grill because it was impossible to cook inside. And then the shelling began. I heard an explosion and was deafened by it. And then I felt something burning inside me, a hot fragment. I screamed to my mother that my eye was hurting, that my eye was burning. My mother quickly took me away. We hid between the garages and waited until the shelling stopped. Then my mother and I looked for doctors to help my eye. We went to the Ilyich factory. There were military medics there. They disinfected and bandaged my eye, and we stayed with them at the factory. But the soldiers at the factory ran out of ammunition, so we were all taken captive. The Russian military put us in Kamaz trucks like animals and took us to some hangar. I sat in the filtration camp waiting for my mother for several hours, and when she was brought back, they didn't even let me say goodbye to her and said I was being taken away from my mother, that they would take me to an orphanage, and there I would be adopted by a Russian family. A month later, I asked a guy for a phone and, in the toilet, quickly called my grandmother for 1 minute and told her where I was.
When on April 19th I got a call from an unknown number, I said, "Who is this?" "Sasha," he said. "Grandma, take me away from here." I said, "Sasha, I'll come get you, my boy. I'll get you, just wait."
And when my grandmother arrived, I was worried that they would take me away from her like they did from my mother.
We had such emotions that we cried for each other from joy. I quickly took him away from there and returned to my home. But still we are waiting for Snezhana. We are looking for her and we hope she will return to Sasha, and I will be happy with them. If we talk about children who are forcibly separated, then the situation is complicated by the fact that the actions themselves are aimed at showing the child power, and the child understands that they cannot affect it, and even the parents cannot influence it. Because when it is done like this in front of a child, look, we are taking you away, we are stronger than you and than your parents, this makes it more difficult for the child in that they understand that neither I nor my parents can do anything about this. But at the same time, the strength of children is that faith does not disappear. No matter the amount of pain, they will never stop believing that mom or dad will return or come, and they will wait for this.
If the world could hear me, I would say that it is necessary to win this war as soon as possible. For all of the children to see their relatives, for all of the parents to return to their homes, to hug their loved ones, and for all to be well in this country and in the whole world.
Та щоб все було добре в всій країні та в всьому світі.
As I already mentioned, many Latvians have experienced deportation and exile themselves. And today, I will have an honor to invite on a stage two remarkable Latvian women, Ms. Vaira Vīķe-Freiberga, former President of Latvia, and Ms. Sandra Kalniete, member of the European Parliament. Please give them a warm welcome. Sveicināsim. Mēs angļu valodā. Jā. Jā. Tas būs jūsu. Jā. You both have very personal stories, personal childhood memories of deportation and displacement, very similar to those what many Ukrainian children are experiencing right now at this moment. And both of you have successfully returned home to your homeland. And moreover, both of you have become true leaders for Latvia, influencing significant path for Latvia to become a democratic republic and also to become a member of NATO and EU. And we all know, especially at this moment, how important this decision was. And maybe it's only due to this decision that Latvia is not experiencing such tragedies as Ukraine is at this moment. UNICEF reports that there are more than half of Ukrainian children displaced, and around 1.8 million has found refuge outside Ukraine. Ms. Vaira Vīķe-Freiberga, you have experienced what it means to leave your home, your life as a child due to the war. Also, you have a professional and academic background in psychology. So therefore, your personal experience and professional opinion could be very helpful to many Ukrainian children and families. And I would like to ask you, what helped you to survive, and not only to survive, but overcome these traumas to become one of the world's greatest leaders?
Psychologists have a name for it, which is called resilience.
I'll give it to you.
Ladies and gentlemen, forgive me. You cannot hear me without the mic. I left my home in Riga when I was 6 years old, 3 days before the Red Army marched in and took Riga on the 10th of October 1944. And I repatriated to Latvia to stay here permanently when I was 60 years old. So between 6 and 60, it has been a long time away from my home. But as we were leaving our apartment, and my grandmother was coming along with me for that last bit of the way, I realized I had the sort of precognition that I would come back to this place someday, because my grandmother said, "Don't look back, child. If you look back, you'll never return." And I knew at that moment, it was a horrible moment of precognition, that I would return to this place, but it would not be home any longer. And what I knew as well, which was painful, is that I would never see my grandmother again. And when we heard from these children what they missed most, of course, they miss their home, because home is the place where you feel security, and your grandmas and aunts and cousins and so on, the familiar landscape, all that is part of your identity. So it hurts to leave all that. Exile is painful. It's like being torn up by the roots, and it continues to hurt for a long time. The experiences that you find in exile, of course, vary greatly. Even for the Second War refugees, the ones who left sooner in the summer of 1944 encountered better conditions once they reached Germany, which was the destination for those who had not tried to cross over in fishing boats under great danger from torpedoes or being stopped by the Germans who tried to get to Sweden, and some did. We had a misfortune of arriving in a so-called quarantine camp, which was quite a horrible place, and where within 3 weeks after us leaving Latvia, my little baby sister died. And one of the things that I could say about exile is that when you do survive and you do escape, one of the things that is a burden becomes the survivor's guilt. There's the guilt of knowing. I myself was wondering if my mother had stayed behind in Latvia like her sister did with her baby, who had a cold, and she said she would not travel with a child with a cold. My mother left because she had a healthy child. The child died within 3 weeks. So this sort of guilt, I don't know how much she felt it, but I felt, I wondered about it. And I had survivor's guilt, as many do who have. It's one of the things that is present and has to be addressed, I think, psychologically. How do you overcome it? Strangely enough, I found that contact with other children was the most healing thing directly at that time. But also later, as soon as possible, to get back to some sort of routine, to have a security of knowing where you get up in the morning, where you go to bed, and of course, to be safe from bombs and what have you. There was a Latvian lady who left as a child and went to the United States and became a professor there and wrote a book called The Woman in Amber, where she attributed all her neuroses and the problems of her life to the fact that she was a refugee child. I myself felt that this wasn't quite a balanced view of things. I was interested in seeing what resilience meant and how people achieved it. I put an article in a Latvian publication that was a newspaper that circulated among Latvian communities abroad. And I asked those who had suffered severe trauma to write to me and tell me whether they had been traumatized for life and scarred for life, or whether they could recover. And I got a number of responses, and I was about to write them up when other things happened. I got elected president and had other things to do. But I still have those letters, and they tell me that no, they overcame very severe traumas. For instance, one who was 5 years old, a boy 5 years old, when Dresden was bombed with the phosphorus fire bombs by the American aircraft. As he stepped out from the shelter with his mother, they stepped over the burned corpse of a 5-year-old child, just like him, and other burned corpses lying about on the street. And his mother told him, he says, "Child, do not look at this. This is war. This is not normal. The war will be over and we will go back to normal, and you will do not think about it, because this is unacceptable. This is inhuman." And a 5-year-old was able to accept that. Thinking of what can be done now, today, the reference was made to the legal structures and the recourse that is available to Ukrainian children and their families. The fact that the International Criminal Court has condemned, or at least indicted, the president and the lady who is responsible for children in Russia is an important first step. I spent 6 years, I had the honor to represent Eastern Europe on the board of the Trust Fund for Victims of the International Criminal Court. And when I heard, for instance, about a little boy who had lost a leg in an air raid or in some other circumstances, I was thinking of the children from the Congo, from the Democratic Central African Republic, from Uganda, which the ICC helped. The Trust Fund for Victims had funds donated by parties to the Rome Treaty, the countries that made voluntary contributions. And we discovered, for instance, that children who have lost a limb will need prostheses that are changed regularly as a child grows. It is bad enough for an adult, but for a child, it becomes very expensive, and international support is needed to ensure that as the child grows, prosthesis is adjusted and adapted, and they can actually go back to living with the modern technology of these devices to actually have quite a satisfactory and fulfilling life. So that the resilience of children, I think, is a subject that deserves a great deal of more study, because it is possible to overcome trauma. Some things remain, scars remain, wounds remain. Last night, I still had a recurring dream that goes back to that quarantine camp where I had just turned 7 when I was brought into these circumstances. It's not a pleasant dream, and it plagues me, and it has plagued me my whole life, and it's not the only one. But it has not stopped me from living my life, enjoying what is enjoyable, and doing what needs to be done. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. I think this story was very valuable also to those Ukrainian children who have found their second home at the moment in Latvia. And going to Ms. Kalniete, you have a different story, very related to our topic of this conference. Your parents were among those more than 60,000 people from Latvia who were deported, and you were born in exile in Tomsk. And as I know, you returned when you were 5 years old. Correct me if I'm wrong. So you've spent your first years of childhood in a different country, in Siberia, in exile, with all the political context. And today we heard those testimonies of children who've been going to Russian school, who've been forced to learn Russian language, deny their own culture, their own country. And do you have any associations and memories that could be similar with Russification? So whether Russia is doing again the instruments of hurting children and torturing children have remained the same?
Yeah, thank you for this question. And dear Ukrainian friends, for me it's extremely difficult to listen to the personal accounts of Ukrainian children about the horrors they have witnessed due to Russia's war of aggression. It brings back my own experience, which is much softer than the one which is experienced by children of Ukraine currently. But yet today, what I want to say to you, that today thankfully you are here with us. You have been freed from captivity. I'm under no illusions. Recovering from this horrific experience will take time, but it is possible to recover, as we just heard from our president. But remember also that you are not left alone. Those who were deported to Soviet Gulag and labeled children of enemy of the people, we were left like our parents and grandparents, alone by international community. We were behind the Iron Curtain. And I also know that behind you, you have the entire free world. which supports Ukraine and hopes for its victory. We want to help you build a future where you can feel free and confident in your ability to realize your dreams and potential. And we have heard about dreams. I will repeat what we all know, but anyway, I consider it important to say that mass crimes committed by Putin's Russia against civilians, including children, in the occupied territories of Ukraine is one of the darkest chapters of the history of 21st century. These horrific atrocities must be investigated by a special international tribunal where Putin and his henchmen must be held accountable for the evil they have brought upon tens of millions of innocent Ukrainians. At the same time, no court, no legal punishment can ever truly bring justice and erase the memories of such immense suffering, individually or for an entire nation. This trauma, even while suppressed deep down, stays with you for the rest of your life, and I know it myself, because as Lena said, I was born in forced settlements for deported persons far away in the depths of Siberia. I was labeled the enemy of the people. I was destined for a life of captivity without the freedom of movement, as my parents had to register me twice a month at the local KGB office to make sure that I had not escaped. A month after my birth, my father had to register me for the first time. Returning home, he looked at my mother, his eyes dark, and snapped, "We won't give birth to any more slaves. I have no brothers and sisters." For my parents, the very thought that I would lose my Latvian identity troubled like a recurring nightmare. Even for me, when I look into the past, the loss of Latvian and European identity seems to be the most dreadful thing that could have happened to me. In the Soviet Russian school, I would be entirely brainwashed and transformed into Homo Sovieticus. If not for Stalin's death and brief moment of some relaxation of communist regime, when my family was allowed to return to still occupied Latvia, I would be a completely different person. I am deeply aware that if Latvia had never recovered its independence after half a century of Soviet totalitarianism, my life would be entirely different. I was 4 years and 6 months old when I returned to my home country, to my people. It was return to, sorry. You see how difficult it is still to speak about it. It was return to the roots of our family, my language, culture, that was the source of strength, both for internal resistance and critical attitude towards the ideology of Bolshevism. Despite the communist repressions and Russification, people still held alive memories of a free European Latvia. They helped to preserve ourselves from Sovietization and prepare us for the fight for Latvia's freedom. I was at the age of 37 when I ceased to pretend that I am accepting Soviet brainwashing and joined the Latvia's fight for freedom, becoming one of the leaders of the popular movement. Following the restoration of independence, I served in diplomatic service of my country, first as ambassador, later as a foreign minister and European commissioner. My life story may sound like a fairy tale about Cinderella, but be aware that if Latvia had never recovered its independence and become a democracy, my life would have been entirely different. I still find it unbelievable that the signature of girl born in Siberian captivity lies on the Treaty of Latvia's accession to the European Union. My personal experience of totalitarianism is also the root of my commitment to upholding democratic values, respect for human rights, rule of law, freedom of conscience and media. As a politician and writer, I use my voice to stand against injustice. In the European Parliament, I am one of the friends of Ukraine who carries your message in every meeting I attend. I will stand with Ukraine upon your victory. I will continue to do so until the very day you join the European Union and NATO. However, let's get back to those more than 19,000 children who tragically remain in Russian captivity. Uncertainty regarding their whereabouts brings back memories of Stalin's purges of children of the enemies of the people. We do not location of Ukrainian children, as many of these children have experienced forced adoption and changes to their identity and citizenship. The European Parliament and other international organizations have condemned this barbaric act of forced deportation and adoption. In the 2nd February session of European Parliament, we will have debate on unlawful deportation of Ukrainian children. The International Criminal Court has issued arrest warrants for Putin and his Commissioner of Children's Rights Belova for the war crime of unlawful deportation and transfer of children during the Russo-Ukrainian War. However, Russia continues to show utter disregard for international law. As long as Russia is able to wage its imperialistic war, Ukrainian and international efforts to recover these children will be undermined. This will truly become possible only once Ukraine achieves victory. Therefore, we, the closest friends of Ukraine, must see the bigger strategic picture. The West is 25 times stronger than Russia and has economic power to support Ukraine to win the war. If all the NATO and EU countries would support Ukraine no less than 0.25% of their GDP, Ukraine would prevail. I do not want to hear any more talk of supporting Ukraine as long as it takes. This vague phrase is not a recipe for lasting peace or long-term security. Our strategic focus must be framed clearly. We will support Ukraine until its complete victory over Russian imperialism. This is the victory formula. There is no alternative. Thank you.
Thank you. And your last words go very well together with what Ukrainian children, those 19 children who are here in Latvia, were telling us yesterday, that they don't want peace. They want the victory of Ukraine, because for them, the justice is extremely important and could help for them to recover. You both, and I could hear it, that it's still hurtful to talk about those experiences and memories, even they date back so long. And today we saw those children. It was also painful for them to share their stories, but there's this sense of duty that I saw in them in such early age, and this sense of duty to your country that you both have. And this is why you are here with us today, and that duty that you have fulfilled for many years to our country, to our Latvia. And to end this panel, maybe you can share with us just a couple of words that you could give to Ukrainian children, their parents, at this moment that the experience they are going through. Maybe what helped you the most to not to break, because I think this is the most remarkable example that you can go through this very tragic experience, and you both are showing that it didn't break you. Moreover, maybe it even gave you something, some sense to become as those great leaders as you are.
Thank you very much. It's very difficult to be sure what the recipe is. In a situation such as Ukraine is facing, where I agree with Sandra, there must be military victory and liberation of the territory, because otherwise nobody in Europe can feel safe, not even those who live far away and think that they are safe. They will not be safe, they will be affected. It will be irreparable harm that will be done to the European continent. The harm that's being done to Ukraine in many ways is irreparable, but it is irreparable. And the resilience of the Ukrainian people and the dignity with which they have faced their difficulties, I think, is admirable. And support from the whole world is important. We heard a girl talking about the mobbing that she had to endure and the humiliation when going to a Russian school. And on the one hand, they're being kidnapped, and there's an attempt to make them to forget their nationality, their identity, to rob them of the core of their being and their identity is, to make them into Russians. At the same time, there's denigration and name-calling and mobbing of the child. And I could see in this girl what certainly I myself experienced at various phases in my life, is that when somebody attacks you and you know that the attack is unjustified, that is, it's not my fault, but their fault. There's something wrong with them. The understanding that who you are, that what is being told is a lie, it's very important. Nowadays, with the social media and the media generally being so full of lies, and the official propagandists that Russia is employing full-time to tell outrageous lies, for instance, that they're liberating these children they have kidnapped because they were meant to be sent to the West so that the Ukrainian government could make money from the organ donation from these children, and simply nightmarish stories and outrageous lies in this propaganda. I must say that this is a danger, I think, to the world at large. It's extremely important that the world at large continue get information about the facts as they are on the ground, to hear the other side of the story when there's a huge country with huge resources spreading lies that are pathological. We are seeing Russia being turned into a nation of paranoid people, completely out of touch with reality, living in an alternate world that Mr. Putin is trying to build with his cronies. And truth becomes a victim as much as cities and countries and the landscapes of Ukraine and the children of Ukraine. Truth is being murdered by propaganda that is based on outrageous and, I would say, pathologically paranoid, both mania of grandeurs and mania of persecution. Russia is becoming a sick country, and it will take a long time to recover. Let us not, in turn, those who have a chance to live in a free world, let us not fall victim to these lies, and do what we can to maintain contact with reality and contact with what is really happening rather than what somebody is imagining. It is extremely important that we do not lose touch, if you like, that our feet remain solidly on the ground, and that we are not swept away by various ideas that are simply, I would say as a psychologist, most definitely unhealthy. Let us try and keep our mental health as well as our freedom as long as we can.
Thank you. I've been being told that we have only a couple of minutes, but please, Ms. Kalniete.
I will be very short. What I consider is important in the situation of external domination by foreign power, that you still keep the clear line and understanding what is morally good or bad. That really helps to compose yourself, to build up resilience. And then also, what is important to remember, that you are Ukrainians and you are Europeans. For us, Latvians, we were 50 years under Soviet domination. Exactly this cultural identity helped to preserve our moral compass and our resilience and recover the independence. In your case, it will help to build you a full life and to deal with that traumatic experience and to put it deep on the shelf. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you both for your inspiring stories. I'm sure that many Ukrainians and their families, it's going to be helpful to them and will build them strength to continue. Thank you. Yeah. And we have a lunch break. Es nepateicu pašu svarīgāko, ka visiem jāiet pusdienās. Just a short word. There's a lunch break now before the second panel starts, so please enjoy. Paldies.